we're discussing Pathworkings. Last time, if you remember, we deepened our awareness of both the words no and goodbye, and suggested that if we can master those two words, then we're in a position of power. And the power that we're talking about is not really the power that is associated with wealth and political influence. And Loic was very good to make that point. It may still be valid, but it's not really the point. The point is that what we do when we're in a position of power is twofold. Power is that which enables us to achieve what we've decided to achieve, and also to resist that which we do not want. Very clear, isn't it? If you're a powerful person, people don't do anything to you that you don't want to happen, and yet you can have what it is you decide to have. So that's what we're talking about with power, and that depends upon knowledge of those two words. So we know how to keep our boundaries, we know who we are, we always tell the truth, we have that atmosphere of being somebody that we're, we can demand respect, but we're respected anyway. That's strength of no. And the strength of goodbye comes from being really clear about what realizations you're having, and not allowing your interpretation of events to be clouded. You see what's happening, you realize very clearly what's happening, and immediately there's a realization, a decision is forthcoming. So if there's any duration between a realization and a decision, then what's going on? How would you not make an immediate decision if the realization is complete? So realization, decision, it's like that. One's a process, one's a moment, and that moment has a body state, and you don't go back on it. If you make a decision, then other options are removed. Otherwise, it's not a decision. A decision is not a clear proposal. It's not a likely probability. That's not a decision. A decision is, I've decided, everything else is now irrevocable. Whatever happens in the future may well be the case that you actually don't do what you've decided. That's another question. But in the moment, that's what a decision is. And when you have that power, there's a sense of tremendous freedom. It's not a freedom to do this or a freedom from that. Well, it's both of those things, but it's just a sense of, I know what freedom is, and I am free. Now, when you've got those two things going on, you can go above them and choose neither, because power and freedom are actually mutually exclusive. You can't have both at the same time. You can have one or the other, but you can't have both at the same time. And so we're talking about that state of being, power to actually, the strength to influence a situation, to protect yourself or to have what you want, or the freedom not to care about either of those things, that nobody can do anything to you because you're transparent. If somebody's trying to do something to you and for some reason you can't move away, what you can do is just flip your consciousness and allow their dark arrows just to pass through you. You just do it in your head. So if you can't do it in your physical body, if you can't move away, then you do it in your head. If somebody's bullying you, manipulating you, lying, cheating, seducing, whatever, just go somewhere else. Know that you're free, and knowing that you're free is what you need to do to be free. So this is what we learn when we walk the path of power. And I think it's not necessarily the case that these path workings need to be sequential. However, it pleases me to study them sequentially, and I can see that a sequential evolution of self makes some sense on some level. So there's either a paradox or an ambiguity here, where it's a lot easier when you're powerful to access soul consciousness. There isn't the distraction. Heidi.
So thank you for what you just said. I think about this a lot, like psychologically with my clients, that we've been taught somehow at an early age, and I see it, I guess, more in men, that commitment and freedom are mutually exclusive. Yet, however, there is this felt freedom that comes from commitment. And when you were describing the path of power, that's really something that I felt also in my environment. So you would say that that goes with the with embodying decision and the freedom that comes from that.
Yeah, we differ between the words commitment and power here. To answer your point, if I could call commitment involvement, then we have that lovely little Sufi teaching where it is meaning that brings freedom to involvement. So you can reconcile involvement and freedom with that sense of meaning. If you're caught up in a situation, which can be because you initiated involvement, then and you want to keep your word, then what makes you feel free in that moment, that this is just an enactment of my power, of my choice, that is meaning. If it's meaningful, then you want to be here. Like right now, none of us are free to be doing anything else because we're here, but none of us feels the absence of freedom because this is where we choose to be. This is where we want to be. And now that we've stepped away from whatever we were doing half an hour ago into this realm, we've involved ourselves and it's meaningful. So we feel freedom to do this actually. So that formula is really, really precious. This is one of the most profound Sufi wisdoms that I work with all of the time. It is meaning that gives freedom to involvement. And you can use it in different ways. You know, it is involvement that gives freedom to meaning. Actually, all also works. So if you want to find out the meaning of your life, what am I for? What does this mean, this life that I'm having? Then involvement will tell you. That will be the free expression of the meaning of who you are, is involvement. You know, so you can play around and you'll see that you deepen your understanding of all three of those ideas, plus the fact that they are a mutual triplicity. But I don't agree that commitment and power are mutually we can't call them synonyms. The truly powerful person is above involvement. You know, you're holding yourself above this and you dip down to do something and then return, dip down, return. You know, that involvement is momentary. Whereas if you're actually involved, then the power to not be involved is not there because you're committed. You know, so it's not just a word, it's like a body feeling. You know whether or not, like now we're involved, but we've all got the power just to walk out of the room. You know, we're powerful because we can empower ourselves to do that. So you know, it's good to think that through. Now what we're doing is saying, because we have power over the forces that would rob us of it, such as conditioning from parents, morality, social acceptance, bosses, police forces, those agencies which want to rob us of our free choice. We're free of that. We've just learned that in the last path of power. We're powerful enough not to be under the dominance of those forces. Now, then we're free to do what? Now we're saying, if you want soul consciousness, the best word to use is yes, to get into soul consciousness. Now, I don't think you can do that unless you're powerful and free. even if that's not actually totally accurate what I've said, I think you're going to find it so much easier to do when you've learned that lesson of power. So given that we're powerful, what will we do with our choices? Well, we could choose yes. Now, what choosing yes means is you're not choosing anything specific. You're choosing to be responsive and spontaneous. Whatever comes up, you say yes to it. Unless you choose to say no. If you choose to say no, you're affirming your power. And you're saying, nope, I'm not moving into soul consciousness now. I'm actually powerful enough to resist that which I don't choose. But if you're actually really in tune with what's going on, then you say yes. You follow your urges, your impulses, and you go downtown and you get on a plane and you do things without any structure, any plan. You just do it immediately, and then you hold yourself in soul consciousness as you do that, and it's just, whoa, this is amazing. This is where life gets amazing. So goodbye, we've spoken about already. Yes, then, is something which is a little bit different from the other keywords. If we look at the 4 keywords for yes, we see them as gradations. We start with permission. It's the first keyword of yes. I don't really want to, but I suppose I will. I could say no, and I might say no still, but all right, I suppose so. You have my permission, which I might withdraw. You're saying yes, but it's not as though anybody's going to feel you're going to continue to say yes for very long. That is the beginning of yes, when you don't really want to say yes, but it's your child, it's your lover, it's somebody that you love. Okay, I'll compromise. I'll let them get away with it. Now we move to the next level, which is acceptance. Yeah, all right, you want to do that? Fair enough. No problem. Not interested, but I'm not against it. That's the next level of yes. And then you get to agreement. Oh yeah, you want to do that? I want to do that too. It's better, isn't it? It's like, you like that much better. And then the 4th dimension of yes is like, you do whatever you like. I don't care. I surrender. I'm fine. Whatever happens, I'm fine. And this is present when love is at a very high level of expression. So we have 4 dimensions of yes there. And we have to be aware that we don't necessarily have access to the 4th level, the level of surrender, at all times. You can't get to a state of life when you're in that level of surrender unless you're an extraordinary person. I mean, absolutely extraordinary. They're called madzubs in Sufism. They're called holy fools in Christianity. And they just see themselves as an aspect of God's will. Whatever they feel like doing is assumed that that's what God wants them to do. And like in today's modern world, they'd be called psychotic, of course, be locked up. But there was a time when you used to have one of those in quite a lot of villages. They'd be taken care of. They were, and in America they call them a hyoka or something similar, hyoka, and they're revered, they're respected, and they're useful for the community, because whatever weird shit is going down, there it is embodied by this person. You can see what weird shit's going on because they start behaving weird, and they take the burden of the discomfort of that upon themselves. So they're well respected by the tribe, because it's a difficult job. I mean, it's like so difficult. We couldn't do it. We're so programmed against this kind of energy that we just couldn't get there. And even if we could, we kind of wouldn't, because it's just too much. I've tiptoed in that direction just to see what it might be like, and it's uncomfortable. So when we're saying yes, therefore, it's quite a lot to do with two things, I would say, the outer and the inner. So on the inner level, some people are more yes-like than others. And of those who are more yes-like, they might have an aspect of their life where they're not yes-like. They're very definitely structured and dogmatic and locked into an attitude of being. And another area where they're completely free, and that's much more likely. So within the person, there's an inclination to say yes at a certain level. Certain people are more yes-like than others. But there's also the context of where you are. Certain groups of people accept yes-like behavior. For example, if you went to a party and the party prevented you from doing what you wanted to do to have a good time, you'd consider it a really crap party. Parties are meant to be licentious. You have license to behave badly. It's a party. Get on with it. That's a yes-like moment. But if you try and take that into a classroom, or a church, or actually some churches are like that. And in the Baptist, is it the Baptist tradition? Where do they sing and dance and do cartwheels and that kind of thing? Is that Baptist? There's some churches in the southern states do that. So that's a bit more yes-like, but I bet that's not really yes-like. I bet, there's a certain range of madness that you're allowed, but if you brought in a fishing rod and behaved like a fisherman, they'd really think that you were quite odd. So anyway, there are contextual limitations for our yes-likeness. And even at a party, there's certain things that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to do bookkeeping and accountancy when you're at a party. That would not be approved. They've got different rules there. So the combination of the inner and the outer needs to be taken into account. And when you actually got to a certain level in your life, a certain station in your life, you make sure that the yesness that you want to express is not going to be limited by anyone around you. And that may well include a love partner. It's quite difficult to be yes-like when you're in relationship. People will find a way. You might be with somebody who's more yes-like than you are, in which case that would open up your yesness, wouldn't it? If he is actually more adventurous than you are, if she is more social, so there are limits on what I've just said, but being an individual person gives you a great deal more freedom than to be caught up in a family. That's the involvement that we spoke of earlier. But most people would find that it's not the outer circumstances of their lives that really are limiting their yesness. That's the effect, not the cause of limitation. Most people would want a secure, controlled life because that's actually what makes them feel safe. If you want to feel safe, you don't say yes. Yes is what you want when you want an adventure. And you do something that like you've never done before, that's not controllable, and you have trust. You trust the future will be okay. You don't know in what way it will be okay. You rather hope that it won't take your life and all of your money, but if it does, well, okay, what a way to go. Like Richard and I took it upon ourselves to jump out of an airplane one time, and it was worth it. It was just, yeah. So if this is the last thing I do on earth, fine. What a way to go. My name will be very popular amongst my friends for a while. So if you move your life steadily in that direction, and at some point steadiness won't do it, there's this leap of faith typically, from safe and secure to I've got no idea, don't know what's happening next. You have to make that leap, I think, in the end, to really put yourself in the wind, and then you float for a while and eventually land somewhere else, which can support more of your elevated yesness of being. And as a lifestyle, this enables you more frequently, more fully, more readily to experience the soul in its mode of expression. And if we remember that the soul doesn't really care what you do, the soul wants to know how you do it. So the soul's developing qualities rather than measurable outcomes. Then it makes perfect sense. So, you could indeed be a solicitor, an accountant, a business manager, theoretically, with a yesness of being, of soul, but you'd have to be a very, very high soul indeed, a highly developed soul for you to be able to work that, because it's quite difficult, to operate in those fields of serious control. Accountancy, law, business management, these are all control freaks, generally speaking. So you'd probably be more like a kindergarten teacher or an artist. There are certain occupations which are very definitely easier to be expressive of freedom, the freedom and the yesness that we're discussing. One of the things that needs to be understood, though, is that this path of the soul is not specifically yes. It is neither yes nor goodbye, but the choice of both. So if you put yourself above both goodbye and yes, and could descend into either, then in every moment that you make a decision to say yes, it's instead of saying goodbye. Or if you make a decision to say goodbye, it's instead of saying yes. So we're not talking about people who are just saying, I'm going to do whatever, I'm going to roll the dice. You may have come across the book, The Dice Man, years ago. A man would roll the dice. He said, give himself 6 options. 1 is go shopping. 2 is go and kill the neighbor. 3 is, tie my shoelaces, and he just rolled the dice. And, once it might be that you got to go and kill the neighbor, and you got to live with the consequences of that. That's the craziness that you can get into by saying yes all the time. And there are some people around who are just doing that. They're not in soul consciousness. They're just irresponsible. That's not what we're talking about. So if you're in soul consciousness, then even though you're quite elevated in your ability and willingness and appetite to say yes, there will be situations that occur that are just not right for you. And in those situations, you say goodbye instead. Not no, you say goodbye. The thing is about being yes-like, you're easily seduced. You can be persuaded to do something that's just not suitable. And the soul can feel the difference. And it says, no, I'm off, and it's gone. The ego might think of itself, oh, I'm a yes-like person, I'll do this. Like, whoops, I wish I hadn't done that. That'll stop me saying yes forevermore. Now that I've done that, there are people that have got married to the wrong person because they're yes-like people. I'm in Las Vegas, everything's going fine. Oh, this bloke looks really nice, I think I'll marry him. And Penny in The Big Bang Theory, she did that. And it's just silly. We're not talking about silliness here. We're talking about soul consciousness that can say yes at a moment's spontaneity, and can say goodbye, either totally in or totally gone in a moment. That reminds us of soul. The soul doesn't have duration. The soul is not limited by time. Time is a construct down here. So the soul doesn't do time, doesn't make its mind up slowly. It either says, yep, I'm in, or nope, I'm gone. And you might know people who are in soul consciousness from time to time, that they've done that. They either say, yep, or they leave,